I moved to Europe to follow love, so sweet, then got dumped on my butt 3 months after I got there, got kicked out of our apartment, then lost my working visa, lost my job, had no money, gained a ton of weight eating chocolates and drinking way too many pints, and still managed to make it to France 10 years ago. Bonjour, hello, coucou, enchanté, welcome back to Unintentionally Frenchified. If you haven't seen my videos before, I'm Kate. I'm a smiley, regular old American living in Paris with my grouchy French husband and our fabulous Franco-American baby, Eleanor. I'm starting a new series where I spill the tea while drinking tea in my favorite boob mug about why I came to France and how I made it happen. I'm celebrating 10 years in France this year. It's terrifying, but true. But what this does mean is that there is no hoop that I have not jumped through, no c'est pas possible madame that I have not heard. Non, fais pas ça. Je sais que vous voyez des fraises derrière moi, mais on vend pas des fraises. So, if you've just moved to France or abroad, if you are thinking about moving, if you're in massive survival mode right now, this video won't just entertain, it will also give you a ton of tips. Today's episode really focuses on why I decided to move to France and how I made it happen with very little money. So, if you're ready, grab your tea, or whatever else you want to drink. C'est parti. Yeah. Before I ever moved to France, I spent 9 months living in Scotland. I loved the Scottish, by the way. But I don't want to go too much into this wee part of my life in Scotland, except to say that the reason that I was living there is because when I was in college in the US, I studied abroad in Pau, France for a semester, and I met a Frenchie and I fell in love and we wanted to spend the rest of our lives together, so I raced back home to the US to finish college in 3 years instead of 4. I came back to Scotland to meet him, where he was working, and that Frenchie dumped my ass 3 months after I got there. Rough. Now this is what I call the motivation to live in France. Anybody who's going to move abroad and doesn't have some like crazy rich auntie that we all wish we had funding their travels has got to have some real motivation to live in France. Why do you want to live abroad? Is it a change of scenery? Is it a gap year? Is it work opportunities? Learn a new language, change yourself, like goodbye, high school, college me, hello, European me. Whatever it is, you need to be really motivated to make it happen. I tell everyone, if you are determined to make it happen and you don't half-ass it, you can come live in France. So if you're doubting yourself and you're watching this video, I think there's a sign out there in the universe. So you now see my determination. I was determined to show my friends and my family, who all weren't so sure that the move to Scotland was the best idea that I'd ever come up with. Guess you were right, Mom. And of course my ex, that I wasn't just gonna make it to France and survive, but I was fracking gonna thrive there. My situation on a scale of like 1 to 10, easy to hard, was like a 5. In the sense that I'm American, so in some ways coming to France, I don't need a visa, I could live for 6 months without one here, so I'm pretty passport rich in that sense. But I wasn't getting any financial support from my parents for this. I personally grew up in the Midwest, so I grew up surrounded by corn and smiles and a really hard work ethic, and I don't really come from a place where you take a gap year off, or I don't know, your parents fund you well into your 30s. It was kind of like you go to high school, then you go to college, then you get a job and you become an independent earner into society. So I knew that I would get the emotional support from my parents even if they didn't think this was the best idea either, but I wasn't going to get any financial support from them. So my booty wasn't gonna just go lay next to the Eiffel Tower, eating eclairs, and crying over that piece of shit that dumped me. If I wanted to make it to France and show everybody that I could, I needed to find a job. I almost never recommend people moving to France without a job if one, you don't speak French, and two, if money is vital to your survival. France is not the best country for just showing up and handing out a couple of resumes and getting a ton of interviews. Networking is really big here and knowing people is really big. So that wouldn't be my first option for anybody. So some of the options to set yourself up ahead of time depend a bit on your situation. If you're a student, think about studying abroad or any type of exchange program. I did a study abroad program with the University of Iowa in Po, where actually all the credits that I earned during that semester transferred back to the University of Iowa. So the cost wasn't as crazy as it could have been, since it was technically like another semester at school. An insider tip, if your goal is studying abroad to learn French, don't come to Paris. There's too many people that speak English and way too many expats. Go to the middle of nowhere France, and trust me, you and your French will thank me later. Or apply directly to do your bachelor's or your master's here in France. A bachelor's degree in France this year costs 400 euros for the year. It is nothing compared to how much it costs in the US, for example, to go to school. Not interested in school, but need the money. There are programs like the TAPIF, like teaching assistant program in France. Honestly, I did this for a year. It was awesome. 12 hours a week teaching English in a high school, and I got like 1,000 euros a month and tons of time outside of that to get a second job, to party, to meet people, to hang out, to travel. It was nuts. So you can also au pair, which is a great option if you like kids. There are so many different websites that will set you up with French families that are looking to bring an English speaker over, and you would need to spend time with the kids and babysit, help them with homework, and of course with their English. But I would never recommend this if you do not really want to integrate with a host family. I was very much a part of my host family's life. It's almost like they bring in like a second or third or fourth kid. So if you're not really looking for that type of connection and you want a little bit more independence, then that might not be the best option for you, but it is a really great way to get set up ahead of time before coming here with a paying job and often accommodation. If you want to start a career in France and you're not yet established in a career back in your home country, I definitely recommend coming here for school, because then you can do paid internships, and that's a really great way to get your foot in the door. If you've already started a career in your home country and you can't really, come back and do school again or start off as an intern, I would really recommend trying to see if your company has French offices that they can move you across to, or if they don't, maybe switching companies in your home country first to a company that you know has French offices, and then making the move over that way. Okay, so back to my story about the Frenchie that dumped me. So we're gonna call him Pierre because nothing is more stereotypical French than Pierre, I feel like, for a name. So when Pierre dumped me, I did this exact same list I just shared with you. What can I do to get to France? And the TAPIF program seemed to be like the best option for me. You didn't need any teaching experience, but you needed to have an okay level of French, and I had majored in French, so I felt like my French was like basic or medium, intermediate enough that I could get the job. I had a bit of experience with kids, and you didn't need tons of teaching experience, and they paid and gave you the visa. So I applied in December of 2009, and wham bam, in April of 2010, I got an email saying that I'd been accepted. I was so pleased. Woo! Suck it, Pierre. One of the things about TAPIF, and side note, if you're hesitating about the TAPIF program, I have a video here about it that you can check out. But one of the great things about TAPIF is that you don't really get to decide where you're gonna go. You can give preferences in France, but at the end of the day, they kind of just like send you wherever. So I got placed in a town called Loudun. So when I was saying that it's great to be placed in a small town for your French, I wasn't necessarily saying like 6,000 people, which is the size of Loudun. I was saying, like, I don't know, 50,000, 60,000, 6,000 was gonna be a big adjustment for me. But thankfully, there was a town called Poitiers, which was like 80,000 people with a big university with lots of students, like an hour away from Loudun. So I was like, I'm gonna park my butt in Poitiers, and then I'll commute back and forth to Loudun somehow for my 12 hours a week. I mean, it's 12 hours. It can't be that hard, right? So, before heading off on fall of 2010 to start my single life European adventure, I needed to get a plane ticket, I needed to pack a suitcase, and I needed to get some money. Yeah. So let's start with cash. When you get accepted to the TAPIF program, they tell you that you need to come over with about $2,500 in your bank account in order for things like first deposit, finding that apartment, until you get your first paycheck, just living off of, etc. So I barely have that in my account at 32, let alone 22. So this is when I really moved back from Scotland in May of 2010, and I moved home and I lived with my parents. And I said, okay, for 3 months, I am going to kill myself, working as hard as I can, saving as much money so that when I leave in September, I've got enough in my bank account. So I took a full-time job. I side hustled all the time after my full-time job. I nannied. I remember I would even bike to work instead of take a car to save on gas. I was on top of it. Side hustling. Long story short, you have got to see the long-term goals when it comes to living abroad rather than the short-term goals. Unless you're rolling in dough, you've got to save up money and you've got to make some sacrifices before you come, and you're going to make a lot of sacrifices when you get here as well. Now, don't get me wrong, living abroad is literally the best thing that I have ever done in my 32 years of life, and money doesn't actually make you rich. What makes you rich are the experiences that you have in life. But in order to feed yourself and shelter yourself and buy that beret that you want to wear in your photo next to the Eiffel Tower, you've got to have a minimum amount of money to live. And sometimes you've got to sacrifice what normal life is for you to save up and get there. Second up on my list, I had to get a plane ticket. Now, plane tickets are not difficult to get, but for someone who didn't have a ton of money, I really needed to figure out my options. So one of the ways that I got tickets really cheap was Student Universe, and I can't use it anymore since I'm not a student, but they're still there, and they usually give really great deals to people with student IDs, so take that into consideration. And what I also would do is, one, I would play with dates. There are specific dates that are so cheap to fly back and forth from Europe. For example, the difference between August and September can literally be double the price in August versus September. If you have any leeway on your tickets, I would say stay away from May, June, July, and August. These are the most expensive times to fly, and December around the Christmas period. If you can make it to Europe in a September, October, November, great times to fly. February, March, and April as well. Anytime outside of those, when you're getting into high season touristy travel, it's gonna be so expensive. The final tick on my list was that European wardrobe, honey. Now, for someone having not a lot of money, I was particularly concerned about what the French wear, what I should come with, not wanting to bring like waist things. I had heard, and I don't know about you guys if you have the same thing, but I had heard in France everybody's very chic, clothes are very expensive. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to afford here. I acted as if like there wasn't like an H&M and a Zara, or I don't know, like some more cheaper places to shop here. But anyways, I was quite concerned about it. What I would like to say to you now is that you don't have to dress like a Frenchie. You don't need to fit in, of course, but if you were like me and you didn't want to stick out like a sore thumb right away, I have an entire video about like how the French dress and tips and stuff, so if you don't want to stand out, so check that video out. But I'll give you a couple pointers based on things that I regret bringing. Those stilettos at home, the cobblestones are so unforgiving here. I have not worn a pair of stilettos since literally I was in college, like running to the bars in the middle of winter without a jacket on. I got a pair of heeled booties like this big, and I live in those things. People here dress for a workout when they're actually working out. So they don't dress like that to go get their groceries, to go have a casual lunch with a friend. So do not bring like 10 cute workout outfits in your suitcase, because honestly, you don't need them. The French love neutral colors. It is like their jam to fill their closets with beige and white and gray and black. So if you want to fit in, I guess I would just say wear a lot of neutrals, bring a lot of neutrals, and then when you get tired of fitting in, you can kind of spice your wardrobe up with accessories. Bring a pair of cute sneakers. Your days of driving everywhere are over. And you now will be running around, walking around, getting public transport, like running for the last bus or the last metro. I live in sneakers here, even at work, so just get a good pair of nice walking sneakers, all white if you really want to fit in and you won't have a problem. Okay, at this point, guys, I am ready to start my European adventure. I've got a bit of cash in the bank, I've got the job lined up, I've got the European wardrobe, I've got the plane ticket. I am ready to go. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up here for the first episode of how I made it to France. But next week's episode is really going to focus on arriving in Poitiers, getting an apartment, opening a bank account, making some friends, and maybe meeting a second Frenchie. I hope you guys enjoyed the first episode and got some good tips out of it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you can get an alert when next week's episode comes out. And of course, I'll catch everybody in the comments below. Let me know what you thought or any tips that you want to share. I'll see you next week. Bisous.